Undoing the crazy you feel around food is Renae's specialty. The confidence and clarity gained is the guilt-free icing on the cake. If you're someone who's a go-getter woman who wants to start living a powerful, authentic life free from food and weight obsession, Renae is your person. Certified health and life coach and emotional eating expert, and she taps into her own unique personal story in this episode where she has battled eating disorders and alcoholism. So she takes that life experience and she teaches other women around the world how to be free from it itself. So tune in today for your next best episode. Welcome to the Sober Living Stories podcast. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of sobriety. We shine a spotlight on individuals who have faced the challenges of alcoholism and addiction and are today living out their best lives sober. Each guest has experienced incredible transformation and are here to share their story with you. I'm Jessica Stipanovic, your host. Join me each week as guests from all walks of life share their stories to inspire and provide hope to those who need it most. Welcome to another episode of the Sober Living Stories podcast. My guest today is Renae Saager. She's a certified health and life coach and also an emotional eating expert who teaches go-getter women around the world how to start living a powerful, authentic life free from food and weight obsession. Today, she's going to share her personal story, her own unique journey where she had battled alcoholism and an eating disorder herself, which brings her to helping others today do the same, get into the solution. I'm so happy to have you on today, Renae. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I loved getting to talk about this stuff.
Good. Okay. So yeah, just bring us back. This is your story. Bring us back as far back as you'd like up to the presently what you're doing now.
Yeah. I was thinking about this morning when I was at the gym. Actually, I was going pee and I was like, what did I get drunk the first time that I drank? And I think that I did. It was Corona and it was a New Year's Eve party and I was 14, I think 14 or 15. And a bunch of families were at our house and we were playing bunco. And I don't remember how many I had, but I knew that I was getting intoxicated and I felt terrible the next day. I was definitely drunk. And that was like the first time I really drank. And after that, nothing really came of it. Because again, I was 14, I think. So at that point, my food stuff was still pretty dormant. And so I had that episode where I got drunk and my mom was upset and she's like, I can't believe you're drinking. And like, she didn't know because we were sneaking it. And I didn't want to do it again because I felt so sick. So then, fast forward a couple of years. And that was when I started getting a little bit more into health and fitness and my body. I was a normal, like 15-year-old girl. You start your period, your body changes, you start paying attention to guys, you start paying attention to your social circles. And I just started becoming very aware of my body, and my friend's situation was not ideal. I would say I have a little bit of trauma from little T trauma from back then where I just never really had a solid group of girlfriends. And the ones that I did have kind of plucked me out of the social circle. One gal in particular, it felt like her mission in life to just erode me from this group. And I didn't have the skills or the tools to know what was going on with that as a 15-year-old girl. But what I did start to notice was that I could distract myself with food and exercise. And what I also started to notice was that when you're 15 years old and you start paying more attention to what you're eating and you start working out, your body is extremely receptive. And so it didn't take much for me to start losing a little bit of weight and my body starting to change. And not long after that, the compliments started coming in. I was like, oh my gosh, I guess people think this is hard. Like, this is easy for me. I obsess over my calories. I work out no matter what. Like, I'm focused. I don't have to pay attention to what's going on at school. I don't have to worry about the fact that I feel alone and that nobody wants to hang out with me. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm going to focus on this. And so I got really good at restricting. I got really good at working out and pushing through any limits that I thought that I had. But then it kind of made a shift where it went from me being able to have control over this food thing and this exercise thing and felt empowered by it and felt like almost like an air of superiority. Like, I'm better than you because I don't have to eat. I'm better than you because I can work out when it's hot. But it started to flip, and I started eating more and more at night, where I used to think it was like a badge of honor to go to sleep with hunger pains and push through that. It now became this thing where I didn't have control. I had to eat. Not only did I have to eat, I had to eat so much that I could barely stand upright. I had to hunch over because my stomach hurt so bad. And I was in that cycle of quote, clean eating, AKA restricting, AKA eating nothing all day long and working out once, twice a day, depends on the day, sometimes 3, and to binge eating at night, just like for hours after people would go to sleep. And then after a few years of this, I can't really remember what my parents always had a liquor cabinet. They sometimes entertained, and it didn't have a lock on it, and it was in the kitchen, it was open, and probably 15 different kinds of liqueurs and stuff in there. And both my parents drank, not alcoholically, but my mom would enjoy a gin and tonic or a couple glasses of wine, and my dad would have some beers. So that was never an abnormal thing. And but what I started to notice was that because of my obsession with food and restriction, that when I would drink, the desire to eat left. Not only did the desire to eat leave, but the insanity that was going on in my brain about, can you have this? How many calories? Did you burn this off? Do they like you? You're not good enough. Nobody's ever going to think this of you. You're too fat. You're too this. All of that inner chatter was softened. And I was like, this is incredible. This is incredible. Not only do I not want to binge, I don't want to eat, and I'm finally relaxed, which was like the first time in years where I was like, this allows me to go outside and sit in a chair and just sit. I could never do that.
Yes.
I was too anxious.
So
I felt too much guilt. Yeah. I felt too much guilt about sitting and doing nothing. I'm not that kind of person. It was like, go, 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 always on, always things to do, always stuff to accomplish. And so this was like such a relief because I was so exhausted. The thing that's different about alcohol versus food, and I'm sure we'll get into this because I think a lot of people think this, is that one is very physically addicting in that your body becomes physically addicted to it. And food, not so much. Again, we can get into this in a little bit. But I started drinking in the way that I kind of started my obsession with food, which was 0 to 100, where it would start with like some Mike's Hard Lemonade Light, which they used to make back in the day, which was like 80 calories, low sugar. I was like, this is great. I can get a buzz, low cal. I don't have to worry about it. And then it started shifting to hard alcohol because I was like, I have to drink more of that. The bottles are loud. I don't want to throw all this away. I have to pee a ton. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to keep going to the store.
The bottles are loud.
so I switched to like gin and tonic. And I then switched to just straight alcohol. Because I got to the point where I was drinking, it started really innocent, like a Mike's Hard Lemonade at night, and turned into thinking, well, like if taking the edge off at 4 or 5 p.m. is good, why not 10 or 11. Like, why wait?
Mm-hmm.
Why put myself through all this
Yeah.
suffering all day long when I can just like feel this now? Like, what's the big deal? I don't know what the big deal. I'll just have a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as you can guess, that again, the physical, I am a very not I'm a very intense type of alcoholic. I went, I started drinking like that at age 18. And by age 21, 22, when I was in the hospital, the doctor said that she had noticed some cirrhosis of the liver starting. So I very quickly excelled. I got a straight A in that. But the such a big purpose behind my drinking was just I just wanted some peace of mind. I just wanted everything to be quiet. I just wanted to feel comfortable in my skin. But again, the alcohol, the physical dependency for me, that became a big reason I would have to drink in the morning. So I was fired from multiple jobs. I would wake up and I would throw up bile for, the first 10, 15 minutes that I was awake. I couldn't keep anything down until I took a couple shots. Or I never really took shots. I just drank it straight out of the bottle, or of whatever I could find. I had alcohol hidden in many, many places because people were always trying to get it. So I
Yeah.
like I had it in shoes. I had it out like nobody. I had it outside in this tool chest. No one ever found that one. But like I had so many different little secret hidey spots that nobody knew about because I was like, well, if they find this one, I need to have backup. And that was just like that was my life. Like, get drunk, try not to get too drunk so you can go to your job, keep some alcohol in your car so at lunch you can go out and get some, or keep it in your purse so you can go to the bathroom and take a couple swigs. Make sure you have gum in there. Okay, don't get too drunk because you can't do, and then go home and then like just go crazy, go buck wild, and just like hope that you wake up in the morning so you can do it all again. And that was my existence for a couple years, and it was rough. I mean, I was drinking and driving constantly, constantly. And
Mm-hmm.
I ruined relationships. At a certain point, basically my entire family said, we want nothing to do with you. I had been to two treatment centers at that time. They had put me in two treatment centers, and both of which I relapsed within a week or two. And finally, on the third one, I ended up relapsing again, but I got back on the horse, quote unquote, after a few weeks of that. But that was when I was very against AA because I was like, I'm not a 50-year-old loser. I'm like, what? This is not me. And now I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
50 is not whatever. I was 20 at the time, folks, 22. So I was like, I'm not going to this. I'm not going to these like weird meetings. I'm not really an alcoholic. Like, I just like to drink. It's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And, eventually I got to the point of going to AA, and that was I personally kind of had to get to the point of losing everything, because I really did lose everything. I was dropped off. I ended up getting sober and starting my journey into sobriety in a clean and sober living house in Portland, Oregon, with a bunch of other women. My parents took my car.
Mm-hmm.
I had been fired from like the last 3 or 4 jobs. And there was an NA meeting that was down the street that I just walked to because I didn't know anyone. Like I didn't know anywhere to go. And so I started going there, and eventually I got my car back and I started going to AA meetings. And I never really felt the magic of AA necessarily. Like, I had just heard like get a sponsor and do the steps, and like your life is amazing then. And I was like, all right, let's go. Like, let's do these steps. I am ready to feel whatever these people are talking about. Bring it. So I got a sponsor. I cranked through those steps. Nothing. I was like, this sucks. This is not what I signed up for. I got another sponsor. I cranked through those steps. Nothing. And I was like, what is this? Is a joke. Like, I don't feel any better. I did the amends. I did the everything. I was like, this is not great for me. Like, I don't understand. Um, and at this point, I no longer go to AA, but I do think that for me in the beginning, the first, I did go fairly consistency for sure for the first 5 years. But just being around other people that didn't drink was critical for me because as a 22-year-old, I genuinely thought my life was over. That was a thing that I was questioning. It's just so silly that at 22, I was so wildly single. I mean, I was like a pee your pants blackout drunk. I was so single. Nobody interested, nothing at all. So single. And my thought was, what am I going to do at my wedding if I can't toast with champagne? I can't. Who gets married without champagne? But that was how my brain worked because alcohol was the center of everything. It's like, what do you do when you on a Friday night with friends? What do you do, at a barbecue? What do you do with your hands when you go to an event and you don't know anyone? How do you do these things? I don't understand. Like, I really thought my life was over. I truly thought that. And I think that being around other individuals that did not drink was super helpful. And just hearing like, oh, your life doesn't actually end. And just because that's what you're used to doesn't mean that's the only way to do life. I really think that drinking can make our lives extremely small because it just becomes the go-to. Like, oh, let's just get a drink. Let's get a drink. And honestly, I was just talking to my husband about this, but I think almost every single person that I've talked to that drinks has said to me at one point or another, I wonder if I have a problem with drinking. I should probably cut back. I don't know if I should be drinking as much as I should. So I really, I think that it's a very, very challenging thing for people to moderate. And I do think that the majority of the time people drink, they wish they wouldn't have. But it's just what we're used to. It's like, okay, I guess I'll have a couple beers. It turns into 4, turns into 5, turns into who knows what. You wake up with a hangover. So that was, I ended up getting sober then at 22 and kind of starting to rebuild my life. And then the food stuff really hung around. And it turns out that being a dual diagnosis is kind of what they call it. Having food issues and drinking issues is super common. And I didn't realize that, but they actually have treatment centers that treat both disordered eating / eating disorders and alcoholism because they are so similar. And a lot of this is because our brains are seeking that like dopamine, that excitement, that you get a rush and you get a release. You get a release when you're drinking. If you're restricting, you get a high from that. If you're purging, you get a high from that. There's that release that you get. And so people with that kind of personality, whether you're just, eating a bag of chips at night or you're going through 3 drive-throughs a day, like it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. And I've done all of it, right? I've been the person that can't keep, red vines in my house because I'll eat the whole bag. And I've been the person who has literally hit 3 or 4 drive-throughs or had to switch them up because I didn't want the cashiers to recognize me, which is the exact same thing I was doing with liquor stores. Is I was switching up the liquor stores because I was like, they're going to know. Like, I can't be going in there this much. Unfortunately, I lived in a very small town. So I had to like find people to get it for me or whatever. Like you get very resourceful when you have an addiction that you need to fulfill. You are so resourceful. So I did all that. But, my food started feeling, it was just like my drinking. And I remember thinking, at this point, I was wildly bulimic. And just thinking, and I had a partner, I had a relationship, I had a job at this point. I'd been sober for 5 years. And I was like, I am in another type of hell. Like, I have gotten sober. Finally, it took me so long. It was exhausting. It was not fun, but I did it and I'm rebuilding my life and I'm in another personal hell. I might as well go drink because I don't want to live like this. Like, I'm so exhausted of the constant noise. And so I bounced around, to food addict meetings, therapists, nutritionists, personal trainers. I tried every program, it's Whole30, ordering food, not ordering food, like anything to relieve this food thing from me, because truly that was what came first for me. And, it took about another 5 or so years before I really started to change my relationship with food, thank God. And now, fast forward, I really feel like I've come to the other side of both of my relationship with food and alcohol, but also, I try not to get too cocky with either. Um, so I'm not like super excited about having a stocked liquor cabinet here. Like my husband drinks, and this was something that, I remember asking my mom when I would come home and stay with her early on, like the first 2 years or so of sobriety, I'd be like, I know this sounds dumb, but I need all of the alcohol out of the fridge. Like I wasn't on solid ground. Like I was pretty solid,
Mhm.
but I wasn't that solid. And so even today, though, I'm not like, yeah, let's keep all these alcoholic beverages in our fridge because why not? Like there's no need for me to do that. There's no need for me to encourage it. And I don't mind. My husband drinks, he likes whiskey, he'll have some beers. So I feel much more confident in myself now. And, I can go to bars for meetups or go to a cocktail party with girlfriends and have a Diet Coke or whatever. It's genuinely no big deal now, but also it's not something I seek out to go attend. Same thing with my food. Like I can be in a workout class and I can, be around someone that's talking about how much she hates her body, but do I enjoy it? No. Will I say something? Probably because I'm like, it's boring. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to do that. Like I worked so hard to get out of that stuff that I don't tend to be drawn or attracted to people that are, if you're a daily drinker, our lifestyles probably just aren't going to line up, honestly. And if you're someone that wants to obsess over
Mhm.
calories and weigh and measure everything and spend 6 hours in the gym every day, like fine, to each their own, but like I just don't want to do that anymore. So that
Mm.
is kind of a Cliff Notes version of some of my story.
Yeah, you hit on so much. You hit on so many things. It's really good. I didn't want to interrupt one moment. So, yeah, and it's like from going way back to the beginning of this your story, when you were pushed out of the girl group, right?
Mhm.
I was going to say, well, that still happens PS in like 40s, 50s, right? It's like
Totally.
that, but it's so funny. It's just like, but as a 16, 14, 15 or 16, you're
Yeah.
affected more by it. When you're older, you can see things for what they are. But you talked so wonderfully about all these different isms and stuff, and the physicality and the appearance of alcoholism and also eating disorder. But like too, I think not the root issues, like issues of origin I'm talking about, but I think the feelings behind those, like the isolation, the shame, like
Mhm.
if you're binge eating and your weight gain, it's like so similar. It keeps you home. You don't want to show up. Somebody might see you. It's so similar
Mhm.
to alcoholism where it's like you don't want to drink this much because you got to get there.
Yeah.
And, they really go hand in hand. And I didn't know that there were rehabilitation centers that handled both because they were so
Mhm.
closely connected, but I'm not surprised.
Mhm. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not surprised.
they have Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. They also have Food Addict Anonymous meetings, which are so unhelpful. I spent years in and out of Food Addict Anonymous meetings that they're just, please, if you're hearing
Mhm.
this and you're like, I relate to some of her story, do not go to these meetings. They're not helpful. It will exacerbate your disorder eating in like wildfire. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
very common to have there be an overlap. And honestly, it's often people will say like I've just switched addictions. I used to drink a lot and
Mhm.
now I eat a ton, or and this is something I work
Yes.
with my ladies around food stuff too, is that it's easy to clear up your food stuff and then be like all of a sudden you're obsessed with exercise, or all of a sudden you're obsessed with your
Yeah,
relationship and nitpicking
you
that.
flip addictions.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
completely understood.
Hmm.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and it's good to be aware of that because then you could be like so imprisoned again,
Yes.
that's not why anyone gets sober. That's not why anyone tackles a disorder to then move to another one and be imprisoned by it. So talk about, like, you said you're on the other side of it. So what does the freedom from those two things look like for you? Like, how does your life get bigger and become better?
Oh my gosh.
Like, just
This
touch on a couple because there's so
Yeah.
many.
It's literally every single thing. Like I often, so I'll be coming up on 15 years in July, and there is nothing in
Wow,
my life. Thank
congratulations.
you. Thank you. There is nothing in
Mhm,
my life that would be possible without first having got sober. It just, there wouldn't,
yes.
because
Mhm,
alcohol inevitably ruined everything. And so I'm able
yes.
to show up. I missed my dad's wedding because I got drunk and blacked out. I
Mhm,
completely missed it. So there's photos and I'm missing in the photo. You know, I don't have to lie.
mhm,
I don't have to lie about why I can't make it or why I have to leave or why this or why that. Like there was just so much lying and secrecy. And so I can
mhm,
just show up and do something on a whim. Whereas before, everything had to be very calculated. And this goes for food and for alcohol. Like everything had to be
mhm.
calculated. Both of these things made me so tightly wound. Just like, okay, I can't do this. I have to do this. Like, just my brain was constantly going. And so now,
Mhm.
I can sit and read a book. I can, not have to worry if something happens with my kid and I might have to drive us somewhere,
Mhm. Mhm.
because before it was like, I don't know, am I going to be drunk? Am I going to be blacked out? Like, I can't do anything if it's after 5 p.m. because that's when I start drinking. So, there was just
Yeah, a
so
lot of
many things in my life.
calculations.
Yes. And so to
And you brought
just
up the word
honestly be
you
able to live.
you
No,
brought up the
start.
word
Go ahead.
exhaustion a couple times. You brought up the word exhaustion a couple
Mm-hmm.
times. And I think when I know from my own experience, when I got really exhausted at the end there, I was completely done. Because it's like
Yeah.
you bring it all the way to the point where you just can't do it. And it's mental exhaustion as well as
Mm-hmm.
physical because of all the
Yes.
things that you just said. And
Yeah.
so, something to be careful of, because I know a lot of people listening are in sobriety, is we're talking about food and alcohol, but then there's also like busyness. Those
Yeah.
tabs can
Mm.
reopen if you're
Yeah.
starting a business. And, you know,
Yes.
if you're finding yourself too busy where you can't sit and read a book,
Mhm.
then you may be moving into like being addicted in a sense to the work or the hustle or
Mhm.
the sideshow or the building.
Mhm.
And so to be
Mhm.
careful of that, because I mean, I know for me, I have a lot of tabs open and I'm thinking, wow, is this another form, but not such as? And then you
Mhm.
just reel it back in, and
Mhm.
but we have the tools because we overcame the other stuff. And
Yes.
so it's a really good way of living. And you talk about exhaustion and then here you are, you have so much energy, right? And it's like, that's a gift. It's like
Yeah.
amazing to have that positive energy that's coming out,
Mhm. Mhm.
like, because it was so stifled for so long, right?
Mhm.
It's incredible. It's a huge gift.
Mhm. Well, and I think
So
on
what are
the
you doing now? Because I know you help women. You help women do overcome certain things. So can you talk about that?
yeah.
How
So
what you do and how you're using your past to in your professional life.
yeah, so I work with women around, I mean, honestly, so many of the things that we just touched on was many, I would say, like 40% of the women that I work with maybe aren't alcoholics, but they will say, like, maybe I should look at my drinking. Maybe I should actually take this into
Mhm.
consideration. But for the most part, it's around the food, body, weight obsession. They've spent years, decades dieting, obsessing, weighing, spending hours in the gym, counting every single freaking almond that they eat. I mean, all of it. And they're at the point now where,
Mhm.
kind of like you were just talking about, where you're like, I can't do this anymore. Where it's like the dieting isn't even working. Like, I don't know what else to do because nothing's working anymore. And while that can feel like such a defeating place to be, you have to reach that point to really do something different. Because I don't know about you, but I tried a million ways to navigate and manipulate my food to make it work. I'll drink only, I'll switch back to beer instead of hard alcohol so I don't get as drunk. And I'll make sure I don't start till 7. And I'll make sure I cut off at 10. And I'll make sure this and I'll make sure that, right? We have to go through all of those things to reach a level where we're like, okay, I think I'm
Mhm.
actually
Yeah,
ready to
absolutely.
do something different. And so
Mhm.
that's the spot that they get in their relationship with food. And honestly, the food is the easiest thing to clear up. Like if someone's binge eating, I can almost guarantee, depending on what I hear about them, that they will stop binge eating within the first 2 months, if not the first month, because it's so much
That
more about
alone.
manage.
Well, that's really good to hear
Yeah.
because I think people that do that tend to think like, how do I get out of this? Like, how do I stop? Like it's everywhere. Like you have to eat.
Yeah.
So for you to
Yeah.
say that they're going to put that down and not do that anymore, that's a pretty good outcome fairly
Yeah.
quickly.
It is, and I believe this with my whole being. I mean, I've done this work for many years, at this point, and I've worked with a lot of women, and almost every single one will say, I can't believe how quickly I stopped binge eating. I can't believe I didn't
It's
think it would
amazing.
happen that fast. And they've been binge eating for, or dieting or restricting or obsessing for 20 years. But that's like the
Hmm.
first and fastest thing to leave. And then we work on like the anxiety, your self-worth, your self-confidence. Are you speaking up? Do you feel like you have to be busy? I honestly don't think there's anything wrong if you're just naturally more of a busybody type person, like you like to have a lot of things going on, but it's more checking in with like, why are you really doing it? Like, are you doing it because you genuinely like it, or are you doing it because you think that if you don't, people are going to think differently? Like, if you stop
Good
working out
point.
every
Yes.
morning at 6 a.m., do you want to, or are you worried people are going to think like, oh, she's let herself go? I knew it was coming.
Mhm.
Are you showing up to the meetings and the events because you want to, or are you doing it because you think that if you don't, people are going to think less of you? Right. And so it's really starting to get super solid on why you're doing what you're doing. And I find so many of my clients are in their 40s to 50s. I mean, I've worked with women as young as 16 and as old as 72. So it's the gamut, right? Food stuff and drinking
Sure.
stuff doesn't discriminate. But really, we reach this point where we've done a lot, we've checked off a lot, and we're like, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. Like I've outgrown these tendencies and behaviors. I don't want to be this person anymore, but I don't know how to get over there. Like I kind of maybe have an idea of what I want to do, but I don't know how to get there. And so I come in and help kind of bridge that gap between where they're at and where they
Hmm.
want to be and move over into that arena.
Okay. Do you do one-to-one coaching or how do you do that? Do you have a community?
I have done a handful of groups in the past, which I love doing. I just kind of run those on a whim. I don't have a set schedule, just kind of whenever I feel like doing it, honestly. But I primarily work with one-to-one clients, and I kind of have a behind the scenes alumni group right now with past clients, which is super great because it's nice to kind of keep your foot in the water, honestly, where a gal just posted in there about talking about how her sister brought up diet stuff, or someone else talked about, stress at work and not knowing how to handle it. So life just keeps lifing, even if we clear up our food stuff and clear up our alcohol stuff, so it is really nice, I think, to keep those connections in that community. And also the diet industry and diet culture and weight loss stuff is rampant. You cannot watch a freaking cartoon without seeing this stuff. And so I think it's just nice to have women that are like focused on, taking better care of themselves and prioritizing themselves and eating in a way that feels good without obsessing over calories and weight loss. It's like, God, every single person, every group, everything always talks about weight loss. And so it's just like, can we just have a space where we don't talk about this for 5 seconds?
Yeah, and when you're not talking about what you're trying to overcome or your past problem, it opens up to so like what are you going to do now? Like it's like,
Yeah.
wow, what are we going to talk about now? And it's like all future and all present tense, like stuff we're working on,
Yeah.
whether it's business or what you want to do in your family, what your talent is, and
Mhm.
once you're not covering up all of that, you actually can like rediscover who you are,
Yeah.
A, and B, like reconcile those relationships, get new ones for the new
Mhm.
person that you're becoming, like that different version,
Mhm.
like a talent, like such as like I'm a writer, but sometimes people have creative talents or, they always wanted to be or do something. And then it got completely interrupted
Yeah.
with all of this. So those are the things that we get to revisit and bring
Yeah.
back out. So that I think it's really
Absolutely.
exciting for a lot of women.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So where can people find you if they want to connect with you during the week?
Mhm.
I'd love for them to be able to. Can you let them know where they could do that?
Yeah, they can, even on the weekends, you can message me on Instagram. If I'm around, I'll get back to you. But I'm very active on Instagram, and that's just at Renae Saager. My website is reneesaager.com. And I also have a podcast that goes way more into detail about all of this food stuff. And I talk about my alcoholism on there too. I have a couple podcasts. I often do a podcast about my journey on my 1 year or on every year. So those are in there too. And that's Ditch the Binge.
Ditch the Binge. That's your podcast name.
Ditch the Binge.
Oh, I thought you ditch. I thought you said bitch the binge. Ditch the binge. Love it. Yeah. And your last name is spelled, for listeners, it's Renae, Saager. That's Saager. So if you're looking for her on IG, you can find her there. And Ditch the Binge podcast. Be sure to check it out. I loved our conversation. You really went, you hit so many great points. It was like an all-in-one for like everyone that listening for, uncovering. Oh, it was great. I loved it. Good. Is there anything you can just lastly say, if there's somebody out there who is suffering from bulimia or binge eating, any kind of eating disorder, or just getting started on their alcohol-free journey as far as sobriety, like what can you tell them about the freedom that they're going to find and like to not give up? Because it is hard in the beginning, you know, to get new footing.
I mean, I think that's the thing to just embrace. I think a lot of people and marketing out there try to steer clear of what I'm about to tell you. And that's just not my style. I'm very upfront. And I think that we're adults. And I think that you make better decisions when you're equipped with the truth. I know that I personally appreciate that. And so the truth is, it is hard in the beginning. It's hard in the beginning. And then it's better than you ever could have imagined. And that sounds a little cliche. That sounds a little cheesy. Yeah, but like
it's the truth though.
Yeah, but so wrap your brain, stop trying. This is what gets us in so much trouble. And this is what elongates so much of our suffering, is trying to find the fastest way. And I get it. When you're in pain, you're like, yes, what's the 21 fix? What's the 28-day fix? What's the pill I can take? What's the shot I can take? And it's like, okay, see you in 6 months. Like, that sounds kind of terrible, but like truly that's what it is. You're elongating the process. Whereas if you just accept, this is going to be hard for a couple of months, and then I'm going to get to see the light, and it's going to get better and better and better. And I'm going to,
and almost,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you are, some people sail through in the beginning, but I would say the hard majority have a very difficult time in the beginning. So if you are having a difficult time, if you're uncomfortable, you don't feel great, then take that as a cue that you are on the right track. That's to the
and that's going to make you want to punch us in the face if you're uncomfortable. You're going to be like, I hate you both. I'm uncomfortable. But it gets so much better.
Right, but that'll bring you, like, because if you stay the line, right, and you stay in this when it's hard, you're going to have a very hard time later on letting go of it and being like, I'm going to drink that, or I'm going to eat that. You're going to be like, no, I put a lot of work into this. And I know for me, if I pour work into something, I'm not going to let go of it very easily. So I guess the encouragement is from that, like, stay the course. And if it's hard, you're right on track,
and just like
big change isn't supposed to be easy,
Yeah.
And
the
fun. There's a lot of good people you're going to surround yourself with too.
Yeah. And the self-respect that you gain in doing this, like the self-confidence, is truly priceless, because when you look back and you're like, I did that. I did that. Like, nobody can take that away from you ever.
Yes. Yeah. And the things that when you get around community, the fun component is that I think the things that we were so desperate about are the things that we can laugh about now with people who have been through that as well. And that's a real change. That's a real change. So thank you so much for being on. And so once again, I'll put all of Renae's information in the show notes. You can check her out on her podcast. That's Renae Saager, Saager. So check her out if she's helping women around the world start living a powerful, more authentic life, free from food and weight obsessions. listening to her personal story. And I thank you so much for being here. It was great. Loved every minute of it.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into the Sober Living Stories podcast. If you have been inspired, consider subscribing and sharing with anyone who could use hope in their lives. Remember to stay tuned for more inspiring stories in the episodes to come. To view our featured author of the month or to become a guest yourself, visit www.jessicastepanovic.com.